everybody, and welcome to AI People. Today, we're talking to Vitalii, who is CEO and founder at Dynamiq, which is an end-to-end platform for Gen AI development. Greetings, Vitalii.
Hey, Ben. How's it going? Great to see you.
Yeah, thank you for coming on today. So we always start each podcast by asking you to make a few predictions about the AI industry as a whole. I know kind of making predictions in AI is an incredibly difficult thing to do, but I think it's just useful to get, some kind of data points from people in the industry as we go through. So first one is, how do you see humans and AI collaborating with regard to work in 5 years' time, and then maybe in 15 years' time?
I think in general, what I believe, I don't believe that the AI will take over our jobs and stuff like that. I believe that in 5 years, we'll use AI to kind of greatly increase our productivity and working alongside of all these, AI co-pilots and other types of, agents that will help our day-to-day. So that's kind of where we're going, and we can see this year or even last year how like AI agents started to emerge and how we kind of slowly started to automate some of the workflows. So I believe that in 5 years, it's gonna kind of progress even further. We'll have more and more of these kind of fully built out and thought of co-pilots that are embedded into our day-to-day lives. In 15 years, I guess it's too hard to say, right? Like in 15 years, we're probably gonna achieve AGI as Sam Altman predicted that it's coming quite soon. So and then making predictions that further along, it's quite tough. We don't know what future holds when we have AGI and how it's gonna unravel.
We're kind of past the Rubicon at that point. So next question is like, how far away do you think we are from AGI? Do you kind of agree with kind of Sam Altman, and you think it's going to be roughly, sooner rather than later?
I think that what I see, of course, makes me think that we are quite close. First, because, if you look at the foundational models, it seems we might have reached the peak because we've used as much compute as we want. We've used pretty much all the data to train those, but the next step is all these kind of reasoning models that showed us that they're capable of much more with the same kind of amount of compute and the same amount of data. So that's kind of next step. And then all the agentic stuff that can execute things autonomously, kind of basically use all the tools that are available to these agents in completely autonomous way, shows us that probably it's quite close, especially if we kind of keep improving all these kind of parts separately. So the better reasoning models, better foundational models, better reasoning models, better agentic frameworks and tooling that are available for these. All the things like computer use from both Anthropic and OpenAI are also quite exciting. So I think over the next couple of years, we might be pretty close to getting to AGI. So that's what I believe is going to happen. And if not like full AGI, I think we're going to be very, very close.
So close enough that it doesn't really matter, and we're kind of splitting definitions at that point.
Yeah, because indeed, I think the definition, when I talk to some of the colleagues in the space, some people are very excited, some people are super skeptical. So AGI is kind of a tough term to operate because if you look in the history like 10, 15, 20 years ago, when you've used a term AGI or artificial intelligence, people would look at you kind of very, very skeptically, just because even 30 years ago, people were talking about like getting close to building an AGI, and then
it was always 20 years in the future.
Yeah, this promise was never delivered. So like everyone was like, like this is not happening. And everyone who's working on like AGI stuff is probably like some charlatan. I also don't know if we're gonna get there this time, but I think we're gonna get pretty close because we're already very close. Like if you look at the level of automation we can achieve right now with the current level of tooling and models, it's pretty impressive. So in a couple of years, we're definitely going to improve that and polish that. And you cannot take that away.
Have you heard of the human's last exam?
No, I don't think so.
So it's something I was reading about this morning. So it's a bunch of researchers who've talked to kind of 3,000 experts from different fields and asked them to kind of come up with their toughest question in each different kind of field. And they've put this together and called it Human's Last Exam. And I think when they put it together, it was only a few months ago. I think the best model at that point was around 10%, getting around 10% of the questions right. And I think one of them, like one of the OpenAI models, is now up to 26%. And that's just in a couple of months. So it's quite interesting progress. So.
Yeah, I mean, but also I think the progress over the past couple of months was great, especially due to these reasoning models, right? Because I think the foundational models, and that's why we probably don't see GPT-5 coming up, because probably like OpenAI decided to shift more to these reasoning models as they don't see that they can make more progress on like GPT type of models. So what I believe is going to happen, we'll see some plateau with reasoning models as well. But what's great about these kind of technologies and these models is that we can hook up some tools for the model to actually execute and use during the reasoning part or execution part. So it can go and search for the information that it lacks or needs. So that's where the next level of improvement might come from. Because it's like a human, right? You don't always remember everything. You just remember like the algorithm that you need to follow to solve a particular problem. And
yeah.
The tools to use, the books to go through, and things like that. So the same thing for LLMs. Like I believe that the next step will be building these kind of agentic tools and capabilities for them to look up for things that they don't know.
Yeah, okay. And what do you see as being the effect of all this for like the global economy? Do you think AI is going to bring greater wealth inequality, or do you think it's going to narrow some of the gaps in opportunity that we have at the moment?
That's also a tough thing to predict. I believe that it can actually improve all these kind of inequalities and help others who probably didn't have certain opportunities to be either more productive or have access to better education and stuff like that. Because there's a lot of like if you look at all the open source models that have been released, like these things are becoming more and more commoditized. So more and more people can have access to them, can use them, can develop things using these tools. So I think there is a much greater opportunity for an AI to actually eliminate at least part of the inequalities that we have. But also, like, we don't know, right? Like at this stage is still a bit early, but I believe the developments of open source community around AI is gonna help us get there to kind of eliminate some of the inequalities.
Yeah, okay. And normally we finish off this bit by asking about the next jaw drop moment in AI, but I think we're still close enough to the DeepSeek release that kind of counts as the kind of most recent jaw drop moment. I just wanted to kind of see what your take is on that. Have you dug into the results at all? Like, do you kind of buy them or?
No, yeah, of course. We've been, as a team, we've been closely looking into DeepSeek for the past like 3 months. It's not I think for everyone, this recent release of their
Yeah.
reasoning model was kind of a surprise, but we've been using their other models before, so they were on the radar. And I would say it's not surprising to me, because the approaches that DeepSeek have used to build the latest reasoning model, which is in part the distillation process, where OpenAI claims that they've used their models to kind of build a data set to improve their model, which is not a new thing. Like it's a known technique in machine learning, where you use a bigger model to kind of train a smaller model using this distillation process. So I believe that what they claim in the report and what we see is actually true, that they've used less compute that needed. But they also say that the cost, which is like around 6 million or so, it's only the compute cost. They don't tell you how much they've spent to actually build a data set, or how much they spend on salaries and other things. So we don't see the full picture, right? So that's why it's a bit deceptive, and people just pick up the fact, oh, they've used so little resources, which is true. I think it's always easier to improve something that is already known. Like if you know that something works, it's just much easier to improve that and get to better results, cheaper, faster. It's very hard to build something completely new that is not proven, is not tested. So I think we'll see in the nearest future more and more of the open source models. I've already seen that Hugging Face, for example, they started work on kind of replicating the work of DeepSeek, but in like basically they will document the entire process and publish all the code and things like that, because the DeepSeek didn't I guess publish the full pipeline that they've used to train this model. So Hugging Face, probably in a couple of months, we'll see some developments from their side. I'm pretty sure that Meta as well is working on their reasoning model that's going to be open source. I was actually hoping that they will be first to release the open source reasoning model, but it seems like DeepSeek was a bit faster. But we'll for sure see that from Meta as well. We've already seen in the past couple of days that Alibaba as well released another kind of reasoning model, which is also quite impressive. So we'll see more and more of that in the next couple months, or maybe even weeks, which will lead to kind of better developments in this space. And just as I said, like this technology very quickly becomes very commoditized.
Yeah, just keep everybody pushing forward. Okay, so before we jump into talking about Dynamiq, could you just give us a little bit of a background on yourself? Particularly interested in your background growing up, and also like you've been building companies in many different cultures, and I'm interested just how that's informed your journey.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Ukraine. I've been doing data science for the past, I would say, 11 years now. So started my career with a very classic machine learning stuff, working on regression modeling, on clustering, and things like that. So I spent a big chunk of my career just with more classic machine learning models, and then around 2018, 19 transition to deep learning as well. I've built my first startup in 2018, where we used actually a lot of deep learning to build a visual search platform similar to kind of Google Lens. So we've been doing a lot of data labeling as well. So I understand how important the data is for all these kind of algorithms. And then I've worked at a number of companies across Europe, across Middle East as well, as you mentioned, a lot of like cultural exposure there. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell my experience. And now obviously building Dynamiq, focusing on my own company that is building the Gen AI infrastructure. I think when you say like when you ask about the cultural differences and how they kind of impact everything, hard to say, right? Like it just makes you more aware that different cultures, different people can have different points of views on the same things, right? So it just makes you really aware that the world is very complex, and
Yeah.
you need to be, I would say, more open-minded, and kind of sometimes try to understand why certain people react in certain ways. So yeah, that's I think one of the learnings throughout this journey.
Yeah, okay. So do you want to kick things off by giving us an overview of what Dynamiq does and the problems that you're trying to solve?
Sure. So as I said, I've been working in this space for many years, and I spent also quite some time on building platforms at a variety of bigger enterprises where we've been focused on building machine learning infrastructure to power tens of millions of users in production. So I've developed a lot of passion towards like building the infrastructure, and with Dynamiq, what we realized quite early is that even today, like we've been doing this for a year now, but there is a lack of proper infrastructure, a lack of tooling for engineers to actually quickly build some of the Gen AI LLM based applications. So what we're doing is we're providing the end-to-end platform for engineers to build these applications in a matter of hours. So we cover everything from a low-code builder environment to observability, guardrails, evaluations, tracing, ability to connect to your internal data sources, providing also the infrastructure to do this in your own private environment. So if you want to build a fully air-gapped system that kind of leverages open source models like Llama. So we do provide you the ability to also deploy and fine tune LLMs and kind of build the applications under one roof. So the main point is that the tooling market is really fragmented right now, and we're trying to consolidate it, providing companies a one-stop shop for everything Gen AI, so they don't need to kind of waste a lot of time integrating these tools, spending more than they should on the infrastructure part, but also providing the governance layer, because as number of use cases and most of the companies are growing, a lot of people are start to wonder, like, how do we actually keep track of what's going on, from simple things like how do we evaluate things and how do we monitor, all the way to more complex deployment strategies and things like that.
So you mentioned that there's kind of a lot of point solutions in the market. So there are people who do like fine tuning, there are people who do like model observability or guardrails, but they'll all be like an individual kind of point solution. Is there a reason why companies haven't put that together all in one platform so far? Like, have you had to make particular trade-offs to get that all into kind of one integrated platform?
So I think one of the major reasons is that we're still early, right? And it's always easier to focus on a smaller piece of the puzzle and then just do that. That's why a lot of companies have done these things. They focus on something particular, and then that's their bread and butter. Of course, I wouldn't say that we're like doing everything from scratch, right? As part of the platform, there are certain things like deployment and fine tuning of LLMs where we rely on some open source pieces, and they kind of stitch that together into one platform. So we don't, at this point at least, don't kind of invest in building our own serving engine just because it's really complex. So we contribute to open source projects that we use, but we don't develop these on our own. But then when it comes to evaluation piece or orchestration piece or agentic framework or RAG components, like we've built these from scratch because this is something that was easier to build from scratch for us and make sure it all ties together under one roof, and that's our kind of core competence here.
And who's the kind of main user for this platform? Is it kind of like a non-business user and the technical user, like all on one platform collaborating, or is it more aimed at kind of one or the other?
So we are still targeting technical folks, right? Because even though we have a lot of like pre-built templates and building blocks that can potentially be leveraged by non-technical users, but still, it requires certain knowledge on how LLMs work or how machine learning works. So we still focus on engineers, whether it's data scientists or machine learning engineers or just backend engineers. And that's our primary focus. And in terms of stages of companies that we typically target is someone who's already kind of mature. So they have probably reached the Series A, B, or C stage, have pretty mature engineering team, but they might have a lack of resources to build all these tools that kind of we already provide, or maybe they don't have enough resources to even stitch them together. So we're providing them one-stop shop that they can start rolling out across different engineering teams and start building things. So focusing on solving business problems rather than building the infrastructure piece here. And that's kind of our pitch, because typically when we talk to ultra large enterprises, some of them are thinking that they might take a stab and just build this in-house. So it's probably not an ideal ICP for us, but those who are scaling fast, growing fast, implementing a lot of Gen AI use cases, that's our main kind of target audience.
And are you focusing particularly on the tech industry, or are there kind of are you industry agnostic, or do you see kind of companies building kind of AI solutions as being your kind of key focus?
So we are technically agnostic, but we see more success with tech-enabled businesses, right? So someone who's it can be a company who's building a B2C or B2B type of application, and they have like a lineup of 5, 6 different features they want to implement, and we're a great fit there because they already figure out their strategy. So they already know the use cases. We don't need to kind of educate them on what needs to be built, rather just provide them the platform and the tooling. We see a lot of demand as well from, let's say, these non-technical companies, or the companies who are not that tech-enabled, like some logistic companies, some other kind of more classic businesses. But what we see there is they lack a strategy. If they've developed a strategy, if they've developed the use cases, they already know in which direction they want to move, then we can be a great fit. But so far, I can tell that a tech-enabled business is just, they're adopting this much faster.
And, as the demand for AI applications grows, you're starting to see companies build almost like AI factories. So they're continuously training, fine-tuning, deploying models at scale. Like, how do you see those AI factories evolving as we kind of go through the next few years?
What I actually see over the past year is that less companies started to invest in building their own models or even fine-tuning. I think over the past year, we've seen a lot of new models that came up that meet most of the needs, and they're pretty, well-rounded in different topics, like from healthcare to finance and stuff like that. What we see, where the demand is right now, is for all these kind of RAG applications where you want to connect to your internal data sources and use them to augment the prompt and kind of give the model more knowledge about your business or your particular task. So that's where the demand is. So I think we're going to see more of that. I feel that there's going to be less demand for proprietary models, but there's going to be more demand to actually connect your data sources to it. And then RAG is pretty broad term, right? Right now, there's different sub-routes that people take, like agentic RAG, graph RAG, and all of that. So I would put that into one bucket, like connecting to your data sources and giving the LLMs the ability to kind of sift through your data and understand how to augment the prompt and the request to generate the proper answer based on your kind of business.
Yeah, okay. And in terms of the risk of bias in AI models, it's obviously an area of concern, particularly for kind of sensitive industries and sectors. So how do you think about addressing potential biases in AI models, and what steps can you take with the Dynamiq platform to kind of address those concerns?
Yeah, so indeed, I think there's a couple of things here. So first is the risk of data leakage or like data being used for fine-tuning or training some of the models by these bigger hyperscalers. So that's why we see also a lot of demand these days for fully air-gapped, agnostic on-prem deployments where bigger companies, especially in these kind of sensitive industries like financial or healthcare or insurance, they want to make sure that the platform or the solution that they build is kind of fully isolated. It leverages open source LLMs that don't kind of send the data outside of their network. And that's what we provide as well. That's our bread and butter, because from day one, we've been building this as fully kind of on-prem deployable platform. Then obviously there is a risk that the LLM can hallucinate and give like biased responses, and that's where we also, as part of the platform, have certain guardrails that can help you detect these. And these days, probably the most advanced one is using LLM as a judge. It might sound funny, like some people say, oh, like you use another biased LLM to evaluate the output of the other LLM. But that's so far the kind of state of the art. So training another model that can detect potential deviations in the behavior or in the answer, and that's kind of what we provide as part of the platform. So the ability to actually use a judge model that will evaluate how good the response is, whether it's hallucinations or toxic language or just kind of biased output that doesn't fit the guardrails. So that's what we provide, and so far that's the state of the art. Like training either a specialized model that is capable of detecting these kind of deviations, or using just a bigger model with certain instructions on how to evaluate the response, and they can actually work quite well. So surprisingly, we see great results that can be achieved. But it's kind of part of the platform. So providing the ability to deploy things on premise in your own infrastructure where it's fully air-gapped environment, and then second, using guardrails to actually evaluate the final output and make sure the answer is correct, but also in addition to that, let's say prevent PAI leakage, for example. If someone accidentally added like a sensitive document into the request, that this also can be flagged and blocked before it's sent somewhere.
And is that kind of all automated, or is there any kind of role for kind of human oversight in that process?
So the way we've designed it, there's still a human touch to it, right? So the way we've built the platform is pretty configurable. So end user has the kind of a way to easily configure and define these guardrails. So we certainly have some best practices, but we're leaving it to an end user to define which guardrails they want to implement, which they don't, because sometimes also these, like the more guardrails you add, like the slower the response generation is. So it's also a trade-off. But yeah, we do have best practices, but we provide the flexibility for the engineer to decide which one they want. And we have the evaluation framework as well built into the platform, so you can also generate your internal ground truth data set or a specific set of questions that you want this to be tested on. And every time you make a change, either to like LLM provider or to the guardrail that you want to use, you can test how it works. So you can make more kind of informed decision and quantitative get like quantitative measures. But yeah, that's why I'm saying like our primary user is still engineers, because business users would not probably understand how to kind of design this in a proper way.
Yeah, okay. So just to kind of finish off, going to think more about kind of company building in general and how that applies to the AI industry. Because I think one of the things that's quite interesting is where the AI industry is evolving so rapidly, and staying ahead of the curve is crucial for kind of any startup. How do you think about strategic decisions when you've always got to stay kind of aligned or ahead of that curve?
Indeed, I think these days the rate of acceleration is impressive. So it's really hard to keep up with the latest developments. And every time there was this meme and joke, every time OpenAI releases a new model, like people start saying like, okay, how many startups did they kill this time?
Yeah.
So indeed, I think it's a tough one. I guess the thinking that I have in mind is that if your startup or your company is solving something that most likely is going to be improved in the next release of the model, if you're like fixing a tiny issue that exists right now, but probably in 6 months this might be fixed by OpenAI or any other of these like LLM providers, then it's probably irrelevant. Like you shouldn't be doing this. You should be focusing on like a bigger picture. And I think everyone is saying this. Like imagine that the model will get better and better. So how do you build something where there's there are like workflows that are involved and particular integrations that needs to be done that all these LLM providers will not build. Like let's assume I used to work for a company before where we've been leveraging LLMs to actually build a product that helps product managers to assess the user feedback from a variety of data sources, analyze it, provide a report, like categorize into different topics. And I would say like OpenAI probably never do this, and you cannot do this with just ChatGPT on its own, because there's so many workflows when it comes to data integrations and the way product managers do their day-to-day job using this tool. So this is a great example where this is like a long-term mode that you can build because there are workflows. You can build a product that is fully tailored to product managers, to their needs, their kind of day-to-day job, and unlikely that OpenAI or others will build something here. But if it's just an improvement, like I've seen someone, let's say, building the prompt enhancing capabilities. Now with the reasoning models, like it's not even needed, because reasoning models can enhance their own prompt by using the chain of thought. So if you've built something that kind of enhances the prompts for users, that is irrelevant right now. So you need to think like what kind of features will make this defensible. And if you understand the industry quite deep and you build all the necessary integrations, let's say in financial sector, there's so many integrations with legacy systems and let's say core banking and other stuff that it's unlikely that any of the foundational model providers will go into that space. So building platforms that help companies in financial sector leverage these LLMs for their workflows, it's probably a more defensible strategy. And also understanding like what are the workflows, because a general person from the outside would not even know like what are the workflows within the banking sector that can be automated using LLMs. So yeah.
Where you need the subject matter expertise. One kind of other question I wanted to ask you was, when you're dealing with complex systems, like particularly Gen AI applications, like the cost of failure in the early stages of development can be very, very high. So as a founder, what steps do you take when you're trying to mitigate technical risk, especially in the early days of product development? How are you balancing the need to innovate very rapidly on the one hand, but also having a really stable kind of high quality product on the other hand?
So it's a tough trade-off because, as you said, you can spend weeks and months on polishing certain thing, and at some point you might realize this is something that people don't even need. So I don't have like a clear answer to this. I think it in a lot of cases it comes from the experience, because it's not my first startup. I've done startups before, and I've learned this also hard way. I think back in 2018, when we've been building our first startup, we spent too much time on, thinking about the infrastructure and how we can build something that can scale to millions of users in production, where we at that point had maybe like under 1,000 users. So and it became irrelevant because we had to close down the startup after like a year, because we didn't find that product market fit, or at least unit economics was not working. So the balance is very hard to find. It comes with the experience, but I think it's important to have like different opinions within the team. So right now, what we're trying to do is kind of engage a couple of people and kind of get their opinions on like whether we should, invest a lot of time and effort to do it right from the first time, or can we actually afford rebuilding this later on? I think a great phrase that I heard from I think it was Jeff Bezos. He said, like, if the decision can be easily reversed, then no matter what you kind of decide right now, if it's easily reversible, you can always go back. So I think with the infrastructure, if the cost of, let's say, rewriting something in a proper format is not that high, then probably let's do it in a quick and dirty way, and then as we see more adoption of this particular feature or something, like we can double down. But yeah, right now I think the general rule for us is to be very scrappy, very fast, and then when we see adoption, then we kind of go back immediately and invest in kind of making it scalable, production ready, and stuff like that. So we're typically like to test certain things on a small subset of users, maybe those users who are like friendly enough to accept the first release of the feature, which might not be ideal. And then if we see that the feedback is great, it's positive, we see a demand, then we can go ahead and fix and maybe invest slightly more resources into productizing it. But yeah, it's not easy. It's always a challenge.
No perfect answer.
Even right now, we typically have a debate. How sometimes it's challenging to have this debate with engineers as the founder, because as a founder, you want to move fast, and you're saying like, let's do things in a scrappy way. And then engineers are like, no, we should do this a proper way. And then, but I think it's a healthy debate, because I always find that we arrive to the right conclusions in this kind of healthy debate where, as the founder, you push for a quick and dirty implementation. Then kind of great engineers, they would always tell you how it should be done and what kind of trade-offs we can afford and what we can't, and then it's up to you to kind of make this final call.
Yeah, I suppose it's the nature of company building, isn't it? It's as much art as science, really.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on today, Vitalii. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach you?
I think LinkedIn, I'm pretty responsive. I respond almost immediately. So feel free to find me on LinkedIn and connect. I'm happy to chat.
Well, thank you for your time, and thank you to everybody who's been watching. Stay tuned for the next episode of AI People coming soon.